Inside the refreshed 2021 Nissan Armada for the 21 model year, this vehicle receives an all-new front and rear fascia and an updated cabin. Specifically, you get a new gauge cluster, a new infotainment, and Nissan 360 safety shield as standard. However, if you are looking for the most modern truck currently available with the most gimmicks and the most technology, this is still probably not going to be the vehicle for you. This is a very back to basics, simple, functional cabin with not a lot of thrills, which is either a good thing or a bad thing. This is an SL trim level as well, which means this particular truck is rear-wheel drive only and not fully loaded. So when you get in the cabin, let's first talk about the infotainment. This is Nissan's new corporate infotainment system, which means it has Apple CarPlay, Android Auto. It's relatively easy to use. It has a mix of touch and physical control. There's like an iDrive rotary knob command structure in the center of this vehicle. The screen itself is somewhat low resolution, and the backup camera is basically laughable. It is one of the worst backup cameras I've seen when it comes to resolution, but again, everything is functional. The gauge cluster in this car has 2 analog gauges, which is great. Your tach and your speedometer is analog. However, it still does have an auxiliary screen in the center that is digital with some of your more pertinent information like fuel economy, track, navigation, all that other fun stuff. It's things you've seen in about a million other cars. When it comes to the ergonomics of this cabin, this is a 3-row SUV. The front of this car has 2 gigantic captain's chairs. You sit up really high in this thing, so if that's important to you, that's not going to be a problem in this vehicle. There's a ton of glass, which means there's great visibility and enough headroom for a taller driver. The seats themselves, in my opinion, are kind of a low point. They are far from the best in this class. They feel a bit short in the leg area. They don't have the best support over long drives. The rear seats in this car are captain's chairs, at least in this configuration, and you still have a 3rd row, which is large enough for smaller children, but I would not put a full-size adult back there for a long drive. The cabin itself has a low noise floor, which means it's quiet, which is a good thing for a vehicle like this, and there's a ton of storage found throughout, which isn't a big surprise. The last thing to note in this truck is the rear trunk space. Because of its design, it has a relatively high lift floor, which means you have to carry your luggage or your items. You have to lift them up fairly high to get them back there, but again, that may not be a problem for you, but it's something to note. So with that said, let's head into the shop and put this thing up on the lift. Nissan Armada, Mark.
You know what? We've never been underneath one of these, even though it's been around since King Louis III's time.
Yeah, we just spoke to a recent rep who was knighted by King Louis. So
oh, yes,
this is real
right,
fitting.
But not from Nissan, of course.
Not from Nissan. So what we have here, Mark, is a refreshed but not all new Nissan Armada. Most of the running gear, the basic platform, all this is tried and true and has been around for a long time, since like the mid-2000s. What you have is a body-on-frame, full-sized SUV with independent rear suspension, double wishbone front suspension, and everything is steel. And everything is accessible.
Steel is tough.
It's real tough. Tough when it rots out on you as well.
Yeah, there's some areas here that look like there's going to be some issues down the line, but you know, that's most of the cars or trucks in this class. When you have all this exposed material and then you come to our region where there's a bit of salt and caustic materials they put on the roads, this becomes one of the victims of that.
Yeah, it's going to look like a boat anchor underneath, but that is not just Nissan, that's Toyota as well. It's a lot of brands. So what do you have here, Mark? You have a big 5.6-liter port-injected V8 paired to a 7-speed automatic gearbox. Thankfully, Nissan did not put one of their Jatco CVTs on this. And it is either 4-wheel drive or rear-wheel drive. It's an old-school truck, 8,500 pounds of towing, and it's exactly what I think someone who wants this kind of vehicle is going to buy. This or a Land Cruiser is definitely in this vein of being old school. This isn't covered up underneath like a all-new Tahoe or Suburban. This doesn't have air ride or fancy bits.
It's straightforward. Absolutely straightforward. There's no flare. There's no adjustable or disconnecting sway bars and all the fancy pants stuff that keeps getting thrown at cars that spend 90% of their time on the road. And again, if you're a buyer that values this type of design, You're gonna love this.
Yeah, you can. It looks like you can even get at the plugs from the
I
wheel
could have
well.
a
Yeah.
3-year-old get in here. The steering rack is bolted right to the front frame here. You could get it off in about 2 seconds. And that's one of the things, if you're using this for its intended purpose and you're gonna be piling miles on it, you need to do the maintenance, at least you can get at everything. Well, at least down here.
Yeah, so with that, Mark, I think it's time for us to take this thing out on the road now that you're standing on a box.
Holy bejesus. We're in the new 2021 Armada, Jack, with the advanced proven 5.6 liter endurance V8 engine, now rated in best-in-class standard 400 horsepower and 413 pounds of torque, and
60 in 6.5 seconds, which for a truck, essentially, that is the size of a small planet or a moon, is pretty impressive.
it's rear-wheel drive.
Yeah.
How did we get one that's only rear-wheel drive?
Because we have the poverty spec here, Mark. However, this does have the midnight.
The Midnight Edition?
Yeah, which is real cool.
So let's talk about it. A redesigned, rugged exterior that includes a new grille, new hood, front fenders, front and rear bumpers, new LED headlights and taillights. Also the first vehicle to wear the new Nissan badge.
Do you have a Nissan
Yeah, I
sponsorship?
got the spec sheet right in front of me. I'm just going to read off that because that's about all I know. Tell me about it.
This is for a man or woman who wants an old school truck. This is a body on frame, independent suspension truck that is 3 rows and capable of towing 8,500 pounds. And because this thing is about 10 million years old, it's basically based on a truck that got released in the early 2000s, you're going to buy this thing because you want something tried and true. You're a person who's looking at a Land Cruiser, but this is much cheaper. You're someone who wants a 4Runner, but this is bigger and has a V8. And you're not looking at the new hotness that is the American equivalents, like the new Tahoe or Expedition. You want something old school and Japanese.
Yeah, and this is pretty rare now to have a truck that's got a J-VIN. And you know what, really, when you told me we had this on the schedule, I was expecting trash, I'll be honest.
Snake, are you okay? Snake? Snake!
Like this, the updates to the interior, most of the things that they did here were pretty amazing. It's not that bad as I expected. I thought this would be like a total dinosaur, something like the old Frontier was, where you got it and you're like, there's no way, unless I'm getting it for like $10,000, am I gonna spend this kind of money? And I think the interior space is super comfortable. I know you don't like the seats, but everything is really well laid out here. It's very traditional. There's essentially no gimmicks.
There's no gimmicks. Everything's easy to use. And yes, this has a veneer of Nissan-ness, which means it's not particularly competitive in the modern space. Like, the audio system isn't, well, we have a poverty audio system in this car, but the head unit is a low pixel count, and, some of the switchgear is a little bit older, but again, it's going to work. And that's really what matters in a 3-row SUV that you're going to be using for utility purposes, or if you have the 4-wheel drive model, taking it off-road.
Yeah, and I mean, you're not going to be doing that in the rear-wheel drive version, but I think this is really going to cut the mustard for most people.
Yeah.
Ride quality, Jack. Let's talk about it. You guys were saying when you first drove it, you picked me up. You're like, oh man, this thing feels like a truck, and I'm like, it's really not that bad. I think it's totally
over small bumps. It's great.
Yeah.
Just over really big bumps, even though it is an independent suspension, it almost feels live axle. But again, it's a body on frame truck.
I guess that's the thing. I'm expecting it to be I'm expecting it to be worst case scenario, just like a 1920s Ford pickup. I expected like really, really old school feeling, and that's not like this at all. It's comfortable in the back. It doesn't bounce around too much.
Got a nice long wheelbase.
Yeah, it's really, for the price, I think it includes most of what people want in this. You said 3 rows, the towing, and rear wheel drive.
It's, again, if you were looking for the newest thing possible with the most modern V8, most modern gearbox, and some gimmicks on the inside and, you know, a crazy attention to detail when it comes to material choices, you're probably going to end up in like an Escalade or like a fully loaded Tahoe
or going up
or
to
Suburban.
the Infinity and stuff. Yeah, for sure.
But if you want something that is not going to, I mean, it is expensive, but for this class of vehicle, it's cheaper than a Land Cruiser. I'm sure it should be mostly reliable based upon how old all this tech is. There's not a whole lot left like this.
Let's head into the final thoughts, Jack, where we're going to go and we're going to talk about some things that you want to talk about and I want to talk about.
All right.
Final thoughts on the Nissan Armada. We didn't have a fully loaded one for once, so it was a good look at what this truck can be at a more affordable price range and, you know, affordable in this segment, of course. So let's talk about what's good here. They've updated certain things on the interior space, from electronics like the infotainment that puts it a little bit closer to modern standards. And again, nothing here is at the cutting edge, so let me just get that out of the way. It's one of the few JVIN vehicles that you're going to get in this class as well. That means it comes on a boat from Japan where they handcrafted every nut and bolt. So if you're somebody that likes that, you're going to love this. The other pros are its simplicity. There's not a bunch of hyper high-end suspension setup with air ride or adjustable sway bars or self-leveling and all of that. It's just you take a shock absorber off, you replace it if you need to, and you're not going to get bent over when it's time to repair it. Now the negatives are, yes, it's not as nice as like the new Tahoe and Suburban in terms of technology and overall refinement, but it's right on par of what you'd expect from some of the Toyota competitors that people are nuts for, and it rides very well. The engine is amazing, even though you could say, well, it's so old, but I think it came out in a time period where we saw some of the peak naturally aspirated products, and this V8 is amazing for what it is. The 7-speed that's in it is good as well. It's pretty quick to respond. It's smooth where you need it for towing. It tows a lot in the class. It seats a lot. There's a lot of capacity. So why wouldn't you choose it? Well, it might be too archaic for you, and that's really about it. I'm going to leave it at that for this time. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next video.